Hi everyone, my name is Ilya Pestov, and I guess that some of you have seen me in the Grok's Telegram channel or by my IPO Uber and Lyft IPO presentations. And today I came with the presentation "Superposition of an Analyst." This is the title of my presentation. It may sound a little bit over the top, and probably it is "Superposition of an Analyst." But I'll give the secret a bit later. I'm noticing that many people are collecting different cases, different benchmarks, different examples of the KPI introduction, and in other words, they are they are searching for a guideline what CTR and CPC CAC should be like, but I'm convinced that there is no just one single guideline. And all the companies have a different margin, different development strategy. Would be good for one would be not so good for for the other market players. And why should we look around when only one thing matters? Numbers are positive or are they negative? If they're positive, the only task of yours is to maximize the result. And there is no limit to perfection, like they say, but on the way to attaining this perfection, you can see a lot of obstacles. And I would like to say about those of them, those obstacles which I believe are fundamental analytical problems. Number one would be the metrics tyranny. Uh, I actually borrowed this phrase from the Jerry Muller's book, Tyranny of Metrics, and where he's explaining why the necessity to measure the productivity of everything actually drags us into some kind of game, like a statistical game. Just think about it. That in our desire to make a scientific twist to the analysis, oftentimes we're moving from the efficiency measurement of whatever it is to being overly concentrated on the measurements themselves. And lately, I am closely correlated with the topic of the medicine, and I would like to illustrate this meaning from take an example from the medical field. Okay, what indicator should be taken as the baseline, as the basis to measure the level of the doctor's proficiency, of the medical personnel proficiency? You'd agree that the number of the successful surgeries will be quite a logical metric for that. But the flip side of this metrics is that then the medical personnel will not be engaging in very complex and risky operations. Why should you go against the scoring system, jeopardizing your own raising, your salary, your income, and all these perks and bonuses which you have? A different example, KPI and sales volume. If the salesperson is on their own pursuing the volume, they'll be attaining not to generate new sales, but to appropriate the existing sales level, and they can speed up the process of decision making, having provided a discount. Although the person could be interested in buying something even without a discount. Sometimes there are even more tricky situations when a client is open and willing to buy a product on a regular basis, but then the salesperson is plugging in and suggesting to make a purchase like for several years ahead with a 50% discount. It's like a monthly sales volume is growing, but the business is losing a significant portion of money and also getting even bonuses for doing that. There is another case which is more sophisticated, and I believe that all of you know what Medium is. From the very beginning, it was positioned as a global platform for journalism, and the audience has been growing very rapidly. They had a lot of more publications, and the publications in the Medium is like subrates and subsites, and eventually the time came for monetizing this website. And the company made a decision to give up the advertising model for the paywalls and the others, royalties. It was great on the level of just statements. You collect the data, focus on the content, independent journalism, but eventually it turned out that the medium began to give more priority to the commercial articles, and those others which were publishing content for free. They have noticed that this like a viral machine of the platform was generating less than 1% less than 1% of the total views from the subscribers base. So this organic coverage was less than that on Facebook. And eventually, Medium was abandoned by the Freed of Camp and a Hacker, which were the major publication with hundreds of thousands of subscribers and millions of views. They simply decided to make their own blogs. So probably a Medium learned how to make money, but they immediately lost a huge audience of people and hundreds of great authors, writers. If any metric is becoming like an end in itself, it is no longer a great metrics. And this statement has a very, very deep meaning to it. Because for the first time, it's a law of Rutherford. Law of Goodhart. I've heard about that several years ago. It applies not only on the secondary metrics like some kind of conversion when you push the button buy, but on the net profit as well. The corporate history knows many examples of ignoring this law of Goodhart. The Kodak, when they concentrated on the pure profit, they missed the first digital revolution. Although the Kodak developed in 1975, they developed the first digital camera ever. There's also a Sears company. Since the mid of the last century, they had been sending out booklets by the mail with their catalog, basically like a catalog, and you could call over the phone and to place your order, like an offline Amazon of the last century. Surprisingly, they missed the appearance of the internet. But the point is that Sears and Kodak were focused on the revenue, although the the expenditure goals are no less important. Samsung Electronics in the crisis army. What happened with me today? I cannot spell it. In the crisis 1997 year, they began to boost investments in R&D. Toyota is doing the same during the economic crisis, however strange it may sound. So I'm moving to the second aspect of my analysis here, which is the statistical paradoxes. And I would like to begin this part from the Simpson effect. Simpson effect would be a statistical phenomena which describes terms when in several groups of data you can find some common trends, but when developing them separately, situation changes and the trend is becoming like a contrary. Let's imagine that we are working with a group of users. Like 5,000 of these users are on iOS, and another 10,000 on Android. Conversion for iOS is 4%, for Android 5.5%. And looking at these indicators, some managers may make a decision about redistributing their marketing budget towards Android because the percent is higher. And this would be a mistake, because if we are considering this data deeper with a breakdown on devices, you can tell that the conversion in both groups of the Apple devices is higher than that of Android. And as for the same like tricks when you do the induction implication of data, there are plenty. And plus, we may miss a mistake, but we also may miss an opportunity, which is equally bad in terms of the game theory. I've already mentioned a lot about the goal placing the goals, but I'd like to give you one interesting idea which I've heard from the Robert Lukacs. He's the founder of One Person. In case you do not know, Live Person is a billion and billions of revenues company. They develop the feedback solutions. So just imagine that you have a website and it's generating a lot of phone calls with a good conversion. And it looks like the website is serving the purpose, right? But it also tells us that for many people, a website does not really disclose the key information about the product, and they have to call to the company to get the info. I know that this is not applied to the real estate, it does not apply to the other companies with a long sales cycle, but the idea that a lot of phone calls could be as good and as equally it could be as bad is striking. And it's also like a paradox. When preparing for this presentation, I've seen this Telegram post by Yegor Danilov, CPO, and he is saying that micro-tuning will never translate into the big growth of your business, and he's saying like we have to think radically. For example, a 50% discount is not increasing the number of sales. Let's double the price. I understand that it's hard to believe in that, and it's even harder to dare to make this kind of decision, but this approach does work. And I respect the Yakor's experience, but I absolutely have to share with you some specific numbers to lay the groundwork for what I'm saying. American cable sport channel ESPN in 6 years lost about 13 million paid subscribers due to the increase in the subscription price, but eventually their revenue has grown by 50%. And this 50% would be equivalent to the 100 million American dollars. And usually we shy away from the radical solution, but they are oftentimes the most efficient ones. And I would like to point out that the ESPN's experience cannot be extrapolated to absolutely everything, because now in Russia we have a different consumption culture. And it's a norm not to pay for your or it's a norm to pay for your content, but had you been launching your video streaming service 10 years ago and having problems with the revenue, made a decision to boost your subscription price, probably you would lose even more. And I'm fully confident that this decision about ESPN had been done by very smart guys from Walt Disney, and they'd been studying the market situation, and they had a deep understanding of the US media market. And right in this point on my presentation, I would like to move on to a third problem: uh, uh, sophistication statements and authoritarianism. I'm seeing that many people, including analysts, are blindly receiving any information from whatever source of influence they may have, be it or one person or be it the whole brand. But as for this kind of absolutely infallible, influences, they should not be for anybody. It's good when you do not have any guidelines or have any truth. But if you want to be an authority for somebody, it should be like a filter to choose the information. But it should not be a guarantee that this information is absolutely trustworthy, just because this person or company is in authority for you. One personal case. Once I've learned that in the US there are only 10 holidays, public holidays, and there is no vacation by legislation that would pay you. We have 14 public holidays and 28 vacation days, and everybody's publishing ratings say Russia is one of the most hardworking countries. At some point, I got curious. How come that in the U.S. they have a lot of holidays and weekends, but I'm sorry, less public holidays, but more hours? And I began to study this issue. It turned out that everybody's referring to the uh, Organization of Economic Development and Cooperation, and yeah, I began to study their methodology. Number of work hours includes the trauma, invalidity, maternity leaves, and all kind of holidays and leaves. In Russia, in 2016, each Russian person worked 1,970 hours. And you know what? It's exactly what they should have been working according to the production calendar. I thought that this is really strange. And I've learned that OECD is referring to the Russian Statistical Service. I began to use their methodology, and I found out that the Russian Statistical Service is not counting on the sick leave, maternity leave, or anything like that. And to substantiate it, I would like to show you another mixed up with data. Before that, I've been speaking about because the annual expression of the work hours, but also the weekly expression of working hours. You cannot find it on the OECD, but in the bottom table, I can give you the data from the Rostat. Weekly, we're working less than Americans, but in a year, we work more than Americans. It's a data confusion in the OECD, and as a result, I would like to say that everybody who is referring to the OECD data for the labor hours are misgiving people, be it Russian media or the Western media, Statist, Hallmark, and everyone, because in OECD methodology there is a mistake, and I've written about that. And my publications have been viewed by tens of thousands of people, and people ask me, like, are you trying to say that everybody's wrong, but you are the only person right? And they were saying it without any counter arguments. And by the way, this is brand influence is prevailing over common sense. And quite possibly, here among you, there are also some people who are taking it with a pinch of salt, but this would be quite logical because where I am and where is OECD. Anyway, it is not that the whole OECD has made a mistake, but simply several analysts of the OECD, and this is much easier to believe in. I have a similar case with the Gartner and McKinsey, but I was not trying to put myself against them, but I was simply criticizing the work of specific authors working in the both companies, because sometimes under the important logo, it's a work of the just a common person. Somebody from the Forbes, while commenting financial activity, may fix up a fiscal and calendar quarter. In the business intelligence report, which costs 200,000 grants, people may confuse the active audience and simply the database of users. In the Vedomosti newspaper, they decided using three numbers from the Mr. Durov said that there'll be 1 billion users by the year 2020. But the biggest outcry of the case is what you can see on the screen. I'm not even criticizing the person from the RBC newspaper, but there's a separate analytical agency referring to them. They say that the system of the health care is degrading 200 years back. But the numbers is about number of hospitals are correct. But the others probably do not know that within the Russian Empire there was Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, Georgia, Ukraine, and number of other countries. And the population was more than over 30 million people, by 30 million people. And plus, they did notice that we have twice as many outpatient hospitals as the inpatient hospitals. They also did not think about the urbanization, that the rural medical stations are closing down. And I know that, for example, in the Yaroslav prenatal center, not only people come from the other cities, but even from other countries. So, the even the big ones are making mistakes. Even the grants make mistakes. If this would not be so, we wouldn't have the mortgage crisis in the US in 2008. And if you think about it, the main reason for this mortgage crisis would be the blind faith of the market into persons and companies of influence, such agencies as Fitch and Moody's, who would send the high ratings like almost AAA. There were like substandard CDOs, and people are buying these substandard CDOs, and many are not even trying to look under the hood. But for an analyst, this is totally impossible. I believe that an analyst should be a nerdy skeptic, and they should be skeptical about their own judgments. And if there is a phenomena of the Dunning-Kruger phenomena, it has a lot of interpretation, but briefly, this is the idea. Ignorance creates over assurance because people cannot understand their mistake, while highly qualified professionals are usually downgrade their evaluation thinking that other people are more competent than them. And so I have arrived to the last problem which I've analyzed. This would be cognitive distortions. Unfortunately, each person is irrational by our nature. We are irrational. And one illustration would be the best. This is what you're seeing on the screen. I understand that I'm here at the Money Marketing and I have a very strong analyst around me. So I'll say right away that it's a very loose interpretation. Oftentimes, people die from the heart diseases. They are afraid of cancer. And they're most concerned about the terrorism and murders. Now, the reason for such a contradicting thinking would be yours and mine cognitive distortions. And as the first example, I would like to mention the effect of ambiguity. There is a basket, there is a 30 red balloons and 60 yellow and green ones. Let's imagine that this is a real basket and I just pulled out a ball out of it, a balloon. What would be more highly probably that now in my hand I have a combination of the red or yellow balloon, or from the combination of the yellow and green balloons? People are inclined to make a choice toward a red balloon because their number is predefined. And people are afraid of the ambiguous risk related to choosing other balloons. Although in the basket this could be 59 queens, so the probability to pull it out would be the biggest ones. And by the way, to some degree, it reminds me of our fear of making radical decisions. And yet another example, it's the mistake of a basic process. Example, here, here, here we have somebody who is wearing the gothic clothing and listening to Marilyn Manson. And is this a Satanist or a Christian? What would be more likely? Yeah, you're correct. But more often than not, these are not my examples. These are examples from the general experiments taken by different research centers that people sometimes overestimate the probability that he is a Satanist, underestimating the possibility of him being a Christian. And this is happening because due to our own biases and superstitions, people ignore the fact that the basic percentage of the Christianity is much higher than the basic percentage of the Satanists. And there is yet another commonplace. It's biases of confirmation. Once I've heard the story of the person from the Yandex, and he was saying the confirmation bias. There's some people looking for an answer. Can I take alcohol while taking antibiotics? Sometimes even go to the 10th page of their search. In my case, it's happening on a regular basis, but not with the alcohol, but with when you find some suspicious fact and you're trying to build like sequential chain, you always see the other arguments and other proofs, and then you see that your brain was looking for a confirmation for something which you prejudged, for something that you thought up. I would like to apologize. So these cognitive distortions are a big problem in analytical thinking. And but what's worse is when you or your people, your team, voluntarily or involuntarily are exploiting cognitive distortions of your user. Just imagine that there is a company which is orient itself on the NPS, Net Promoter Score, and the manager is giving it the challenge. You have to increase the index of the consumer loyalty, like let's fix the bugs, let's develop new products. But the index can be increased very easily if you make a hint of what evaluation would be good and what would be bad. And the nominal loyalty will grow immediately. But as a matter of fact, the true attitude of the users to the product will not change. And it will happen because of the anchoring effect. In Stanford, once they've done an experiment, the participants of the experiment were split into groups and asked one question. How many years or how old was Gandhi when he died? But they gave different addition to the groups. For the first group, was he 90 or over, and the second group, was he 140 or over? The first assumed that Gandhi died when he was 50. The second group that he died when he was 67. It's an anchoring number. A number of 90 in the question for the first group made them to give a lesser number than for the second group, where the anchor was like way over 90. We're so strange, as people, as humans. When trying to evaluate something, it's not simply to give an abstract number, and our perception will be changing. Perception of the object we evaluate will be changing. And actually, speaking about the cognitive distortions, there are many. And I recommend you to study all of them. And believe me, this will make you think. Will make you think about many things. Will be some breeding ground for good discussions. And our brain is very, very unusual. Very unusual. A modern computer is working on bytes, zeros and ones. It's a binary system. On the basis of the quantum computer, there will be a cool bit, which may be in a superposition and can have several values at the same time. If you have not forgotten, the name of my presentation is a superposition of an analyst. Today, I've told you that we have to think in a systemic way. We have to rethink everything and everyone. We have to put doubts against any judgments and not to let our brain fool us. In all of these principles, we also have a lot of internal contradictions. And how to maneuver in the flow of this data by sticking to the data, I do not know. And I want to comfort myself with the thought that scientific strictness of an analysis, it's about perfectionism, right? Which is good, which is sorry, which is bad as a perfectionist. And to all of you, I'm wishing to achieve a superposition and to develop quantum thinking. Thank you. I think we all are witnessing this right now. When I was first planning a program of the marketing, wanted to. It was one of the biggest challenges to invite Ilya over here. I was really hoping for him to come over, and after several iterations and negotiations, Ilya agreed to speak today. And what do we have right now? It's a mid-second day. We have way less people here than yesterday, and we have a fully packed auditorium where 570 chairs, and you are afraid. Once again, let's give a round of applause to Ilya for his great presentation, which is a quintessence of what is happening with analytical studies today. And today, probably we should not leave because we have a secret presentation. Let's go, let's go. Thank you very much, Ilya. Thank you, everyone. Ilya, a small gift from the Marketing team. And